I didn't see you there. I just got back from the market. It just started to snow here, and when it gets cold outside, the only thing that really says soul warming to me is soup. So Kim's working a little late tonight. She'll be home about 7:30, and I wanted to have some soup ready when she walked in. So I picked up a couple of things at the store, and today we're going to do a tortellini, or a cheese tortellini, and an Italian sausage soup. So let's head to the kitchen and get started. The ingredients assortment we're going to be using today is a little bit of 1% milk. It doesn't call for 1%, it calls for 2% or whole milk, but I cut down to the 1% because it doesn't really affect the soup any, and it takes a few calories off of there, which is always good for the waistline. I've got an onion, got a package of cheese tortellini, pre-made cheese tortellini. I'm going to use some carrots and garlic. Got some chicken stock back there, which you could have made on your own if you wanted to use the recipe that we used in the last video that we did. And then you've got a pound of Italian sausage and some baby spinach. Oh, and a little bit of flour. So if you're lucky enough to have a sous chef, like I do, we're going to take this pound of Italian sausage, we're going to go ahead and put it into the pot, and then we're going to brown it until it's done. Okay, so you'll notice the sausage is browning up real nice in the pan here. Jarrett's got it all broken up in pieces like it's supposed to be. A tip for you, when we first put it in, it's all in like a big clump, and Jarrett said, am I supposed to break this up? Well, if you let it cook for a little while and then you start to break it up, it breaks up a whole lot easier instead of trying to do it when it's all raw and it has a tendency to stick to the spatula. Jarrett, have you found it a lot easier to break it up since it's been cooking?
Yes.
Absolutely. Okay. So the setup that I like to use here is I take my cutting board, I got my chef's knife, and then I've got the Rachel Ray trash bowl right here in the sink. And what I like to do is I kind of do everything over here. That way I can just cut the top off the onion, and then we'll just kind of push everything off on the side. Now you'll notice you've got a bad spot on your onion. That's fine. We're just going to clean that off as we go. So once you get down inside there and get that outer skin of the onion peeled off, we're going to pitch it in the trash right here. And then you'll see that the bad spot doesn't exist anymore. So what we're going to do now is, and this is the way I like to do an onion when I'm doing it. We're supposed to dice it, and you can do large or you can do small. I prefer small dices in soup because they'll kind of break up or dissolve as they cook, and then you don't really notice the onion, or you don't get that aggressive taste of onion chunks in your soup, but you still get the flavor of the onion, which is what we're looking for. So we're going to slice this down. I go about 3/4 of the way down. Turn it up on its side. Now the lines you get in between there kind of allow you to control how big you want your dice. Still got a little bit left here on the end, so then I just flip it up on its side. And there you have it, an onion dice. Now I keep about 10 or 15 of these up in the cabinet, and I actually use them for the mise en place, which is French for cut all your shit up into little tiny pieces. I'm pretty sure that's not true. I think it means everything in its place, but and there you go. One diced onion. So the recipe calls for 2 large carrots. I don't necessarily like to use, I like getting these baby carrots because they're already cleaned. So what I'll do is I'll typically just lay out, like if it calls for 2, I'll lay out, say, 10 of the baby ones, because I think that's about right, and kind of gives me what I want. And then I'm just going to take these and I'll put 2 of them side by side, and then we'll just kind of go through and chop them up like that until we get them all done. Couple carrots. Recipe calls for 4 garlic cloves. I used to keep raw garlic around the house, and it's not that I mind doing it because peeling it and mincing it up is kind of a task, but then I kind of started using, and you'll see I just get this at Walmart, and all it is just a jug of minced garlic. So when it calls for 4 garlic cloves, essentially what I'll do is I just take a teaspoon, or a half a tablespoon in this instance, and I'll do 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's what we'll call the garlic cloves. A little heavy on the garlic maybe, but I kind of like that, so it doesn't really bother me. And plus, sometimes the garlic, when it sits in the jar, has a tendency to not pack as potent of a flavor. So I don't mind having a little bit more just to kind of get the kick that I want in the soup. And what we're going to do now is we're going to transfer the sausage out of the pan over to a plate here to let it sit for a few minutes. The reason why I'm not dumping this into a colander and getting rid of all the grease is we're actually going to reserve 2 tablespoons of the grease for the recipe to use later. So I want to get the sausage cleaned up, get the grease out of there that I need, and then we'll dispose of the rest of it. So let's get started on that. And you'll see that I'm just using a slotted spoon. It's actually a deep frying spoon, but I like it because it gives the food a chance to, the sausage can drain out of there when you're pulling it out. Okay, so we're actually going to use that grease. And the other thing I'm going to tell you is, they call those brown bits. We're not going to get rid of those because that's just nothing but pure flavor, and that's going to help season the soup as it goes on. So we'll save that grease, and then we'll go ahead and get started constructing the soup. Okay, so with the sausage cooked, and we've got it sitting over here draining now, letting the grease come out of it, we're going to add the carrots, and we're going to add the onions into the already hot pan. And we're going to saute these for about 5 minutes. I say until it gets clear, or until the onions start to get translucent. Oh, it smells fantastic when those onions are cooking, and that sausage, the grease left off of the sausage is what's actually going to season the onions and the carrots while they cook. So we're going to let this go for about 4 or 5 minutes. We're going to stir occasionally just to keep everything from sticking to the bottom of the pan. We don't want anything burning, and then we'll come back here in just a minute after it's done. As you can see, the onions are going to get what I would call opaque or almost translucent, and they're starting to get to the point where they're browning. And because I don't want them to burn, we're going to go ahead and get the garlic in there. A little bit of juice on that as well. This is only going to go about a minute or 2, or they say until it gets fragrant. So again, we're going to toss that around, kind of let that, oh yeah, that smells fantastic. I wish you had smell vision. Kind of let that cook just a minute or 2, and then we're going to get started on the next process, which will be to start making a roux. Okay, so it's been going long enough. You kind of got to really watch garlic, because garlic will burn on you quickly, and when it burns on you, it puts off a bitter taste, and we don't want that. So I'm going to add a 1/4 cup of flour into there. We're going to stir this around. This is what we want the flour to do, is to coat everything in the pan. And we're going to make, it's a roux. It's going to be a thickener, and this is what's going to give the cream soup, or it's going to give the soup base for the soup so that it will turn nice and creamy on us and not be too liquidy like a normal soup would be. More like a chowder almost. So that's all coated. And what we're going to do now is I made some fresh chicken stock by opening up 2 containers and pouring them in this big bowl here. So we're going to slowly add this. We're going to stir it around, and you'll notice, if you look down in here, that it thickens as you add. And that's what that flour is doing. So, a little bit more. We're building a base of flavors here. You had the bottom of the pan that had the brown bits on it, and then you added the chicken stock, and we're going to kind of slow roast this a little bit, so it's going to bring out the flavor that was already coming out in the carrots and the onions. And that's what we're doing, is we're basically layering flavors. So just continue to work that in, and as you get it in there, as you add each little bit, it'll start to break up those clumps of flour that have formed a little bit more, and ultimately it'll turn into this thick, rich broth that's going to be the base for the soup when we add the milk in later on. Okay, so everything's in, and what we're going to do now is we're going to cook this until it returns to a simmer, and by that, what I mean is you just want to try it. You want to get some bubbles. You want to see it starting to shimmer on the top and glisten a little bit, so you know that it's getting closer to boil, or it's getting close to boiling. When that happens, we're going to reduce, and we're going to let it go for about 5 minutes before we do the next step, which is going to be to add a couple more ingredients to the soup. Okay, so it's been about 5 minutes. If you look down in here, you'll see that it's almost silky. It's almost velvety, which is what we want. I mean, it's still liquidy, but it's got some texture to it, and we like that, okay? So I'm going to encourage you of a couple things. First of all, we're going to add the sausage back into here. If you try it in the process and it seems like it needs salt or pepper added to it, don't put it in there yet. sausage has got some sodium in it. I did use a low sodium chicken broth because, as we talked about last time, I don't really like the food to control my salt. I want to be able to do the salt and the pepper myself. So don't put salt and pepper in it yet. Put the sausage in, because the sausage, again, will have a fair amount of salt in it. And you don't want to over salt your food because it's really hard to come back from that, okay? So as a couple of my kids will tell you on a very bad mashed potato episode that I don't really like to talk about. What we're going to do is we're going to add the sausage back in here. Okay. There we go. Get all that grease off of there as it drained off the plate. Kind of give that a stir to just get it mixed up a little bit. We're going to add in 2 cups of 1% milk, which you will notice instantly gives it that creamy color that we're looking for in this particular soup. We're going to add in 1 9-ounce package of pre-made cheese tortellini. I do have a pasta maker at home. I'm not going to make tortellini for you, so don't look for that in upcoming episodes. We'll put that right into the soup. And then on top of that, we're also going to add 5 ounces of, I used Organic Girl, just a baby spinach. You can use whatever you want. You can use kale, spinach, mustard, any kind of green, the green of your choice. There's a lot there. It's going to look like it's going to be overwhelming, but the thing is, when it cooks, it's going to cook down, and it won't end up being near as much as it looks like. But that is 5 ounces of cleaned and trimmed baby spinach. So we'll take our spoon and give it a good stir and get everything down in there where it belongs. Again, we're going to let this return to a simmer. It's going to kind of wilt the spinach, and the spinach won't be such a big presence in the soup, but it'll still be in there. And once that gets cooked down there, we're just going to shut it off. Now, this soup is essentially done. It can cook for another 10 or 15 minutes or until the tortellini is al dente, and then it's ready to eat. What I will tell you is this. It's been my experience that if you let lasagna sit, it always tastes better the next day. She's not going to be home for about 3 hours, so my whole goal was this soup is done. It's going to go on the back burner with a lid on it, and we're just going to let it sit and let the flavors kind of mull and bring out as much as we possibly can into the soup. So about 7 o'clock, we're going to put it back on the burner on low and bring it up to a gentle boil. And then we're going to dish out a cup, and we're going to have some really nice, heartwarming, soul food soup tonight when she gets home. Let it sit if you can. I mean, you can eat it, obviously, once the pasta's done, but let it sit. I think it makes the soup 100 times better than what it was when it was originally done. So we'll get that returned back to a boil, and we'll have soup here in just a little while. So the second part of our meal tonight will be a Red Lobster garlic and cheese cheddar bay biscuit. Nothing fancy about this one. It's out of a box. It's really easy to use, though. You're basically just adding cold water and a half a cup of grated cheddar cheese to it, and it turns into a, oh boy, back there. It turns into a really good biscuit. I like it because it gets the crunchy edges around the bottom. And for those of you who grew up with your mom and dad making quick biscuits, that's what this is really, really similar to, and it goes really well with the soup. So that's what we're having with our soup tonight. Okay, so that's it. Thanks for tuning in this week. I really appreciate you being here. I almost made 100 views last time, so hopefully I'll get there this time. I hope you see how easy that was. We used minimal ingredients. The whole thing literally took less than a half an hour, 45 minutes, and that was prepping, cooking, and everything. And the soup is done, and it's going to be ready for dinner tonight. Finish that off in a bowl with a nice dusting of some fresh shaved or grated Parmesan cheese, and you got your roll, and you've got a nice warm cup of soup on a winter day. I hope you enjoyed. If you have any suggestions or anything you'd like to see going in the future, I think next time we may try and do guacamole at Jarrett's request. I told him we were only having the guacamole if he helped made it, and he agreed to eat it at the end. So already he's made a big advance. He's eating a cup of the soup right now that we tried to make sure it was okay. And it's got spinach and carrots and onions in it, and he's devouring it. So any of you know Jarrett know it's come a long way. Jarrett, I'm assuming that soup's good?
Soup's delicious.
Yeah, Jarrett likes it real well. Thanks for stopping by, folks. Hope you enjoyed. See you next time.